Unpopular opinions and hot takes, we all have them. And you folks definitely have a lot of them about Animal Crossing. Although the series is very relaxing and super cozy, that doesn't mean people enjoy every aspect of the games. Some things that some people love, others will absolutely hate, and vice versa. One of the most popular series on my channel historically has been my Unpopular Opinion series, where I shared your most unpopular Animal Crossing hot takes. So I've decided to make a compilation of some of the absolute best Animal Crossing hot takes over the years. Keep in mind, some of these will be from when before New Horizons released, but it adds a really interesting perspective. So leave a like on the video if you're ready for some of the most unpopular Animal Crossing opinions, and let's jump right into this. Ari says, making Animal Crossing more focused on decorating has shifted the series in a direction that makes it feel less unique. It's still Animal Crossing, but it feels less focused on the actual animal villages and more on the village itself. It's more about making things pretty now rather than island living. So this actually turned out to be quite a popular opinion, honestly. As you can see, it has like 179 likes on it, so it is actually quite a popular take, and I noticed a lot of people felt this way, that Animal Crossing New Horizons has moved more in the direction away from island living and more towards being a sort of decorating game. Now, everyone's going to feel differently about this. Personally, I love the decorating parts of Animal Crossing, but I think there needs to be more of a balance in the next Animal Crossing game, where we have, more island life, more to enjoy with the island, but also good decorating features as well. I don't think we need to have one or the other, I really don't. Both could happily coexist and then everyone would be happy. I've seen a lot of people saying there shouldn't be any decorating in Animal Crossing, but I don't agree with that at all. Animal Crossing has always had decorating elements, and in the past games, it honestly felt at times really sort of arduous to decorate, which wasn't fun for people who did enjoy that. So I think appealing to more people is the better answer rather than having one or the other. So I would like to see the island life come back more, but I also want to see decorating features as well and, see that improved upon. So Jeff says, this is probably actually unpopular, but having tools break is kinda cool. I miss the perfect trees rotting away. The detail of usable tools and things breaking down is an interesting detail. I agree with Jeff, and this was definitely an unpopular opinion. I know the comment has 10 likes, but I saw so many different comments from people saying they hated the fact tools break, and to be fair, I kind of agree that maybe the golden tools should not break. After all, you spend so much time getting those recipes just for them to break. It feels a bit ridiculous, especially when you consider that the pole vault and the ladder don't break, and those would actually be used a ton more, so it's really interesting to me. But on the inverse, I do like that tools break. It reminds me of Breath of the Wild. I don't know if they took some inspiration from them, maybe a little bit. I mean, I know Breath of the Wild wasn't the first game with tools breaking in it, but I'm sure you get what I mean. Either way, I like the fact that tools break. I think it's fine. Burrito Z says, time travel is always morally right. Now, time travel is one of the most heavily debated subjects in all of Animal Crossing. Now, my personal take with it is, people can play how they want. They can enjoy the game how they want. They spent the money on the game, they can play how they want to. People time traveling or not time traveling doesn't affect your gameplay experience. Now, I know there's a few people who are really going to disagree with me on this and think you should never time travel, but I will just say, if it doesn't affect your game, it should not affect you, basically. So I think it's fine to time travel, and I think it's fine if you don't want to time travel. I love that people play in different styles. No one should be forced to play a certain way in the game. If someone wants to play with time travel, or they don't want to play with it and they just want to play the standard way, that's fine. And also, another thing worth noting is Nintendo doesn't care if you time travel. They really don't. I know they time-locked events in the past, but that's really the only sort of limitation or punishment, whatever you want to call it, for time traveling. There's no consequences aside from turnips rotting if you go backwards for time traveling, and they could have added so many more. Trust me, there's lots of things game developers can do to make time traveling bad for the players, yet they've never done that. Anna says version 2.0 is a complete game and the game isn't unfinished or abandoned just because it's missing a few minor features. So there's a lot of nuance to this one, I feel like, but I mostly do agree with Anna. I think Animal Crossing New Horizons is a wonderful game, and I've seen lots of takes saying that even version 2.0 didn't really fix the problems that people had with it. I personally feel really satisfied with the game, but I understand that some people just don't. They think Animal Crossing New Horizons is kind of a downgrade compared to some of the previous entries. Personally though, I'm not really missing anything too much. I'd say the main thing I'm missing is Tortimer's Island and the mini-games. I think New Horizons has a serious lack of mini-games, and I wouldn't call those minor features. I would call those kind of more significant, especially given that New Horizons lets you play online with up to 8 people, yet there's nothing to do. It's very strange. However, aside from that, I actually think New Horizons, especially the 2.0 update, have been amazing. I really love them. I'm sure you guys all know that. That's not to say that I think the game is perfect and it could improve, and I think criticism, and constructive criticism I should say, is really good for Animal Crossing. Bill Cypher says, Pocket Camp has more interaction with the furniture and more sets of them in New Horizons, and it annoys me. I only played Pocket Camp New Horizons, so I can't speak on behalf of previous games, but whenever I look into Pocket Camp new items, I'm just upset they aren't there in New Horizons. Pocket Camp also has a lot of magical clothes and effects, snow falling around you, shining stars, fairy wings that move, and I wish all of that was in New Horizons. So I do agree with Bill, absolutely. There should be more items in Animal Crossing New Horizons, especially ones of interactivity. I mean, who doesn't want that? That's a popular opinion for sure. However, the one thing that I will disagree with is that Pocket Camp really isn't as magical as it seems. It really isn't. Most of these items, especially the best ones in the game, including clothes, are locked behind real money microtransactions. The microtransactions in Pocket Camp are aggressive. They really are. Pocket Camp has had a serious problem with microtransactions, and many players left the game because of that. I don't think any of us want that for New Horizons. If you total up the price of all of these items in the game and all of the sort of clothes and everything, it would come to way more than New Horizons. So I think the sort of argument that Pocket Camp is free and New Horizons cost however much it costs for you, it doesn't really hold up for me personally. Dammy says, villagers aren't necessarily boring and don't always say the same stuff. People are under that impression because they have multiple of the same personality type in their islands. For example, if you have 4 lazies like Bo, Sasha, Stitches, and Zucker, they're gonna have the same dialogue and talk about bug and naps. There are 8 personality types. Diversify your villagers and I promise the interactions will be less boring. So, I agree. I mostly agree with this one, honestly. I do think that people saying New Horizons has barely any dialogue, that isn't true, especially after the 2.0 update. It's just a lot of this dialogue is very situational and you have to do certain things to unlock it, so it's totally understandable that a lot of people might have missed it. Not everyone can play the game as much as some of us do, so it's completely understandable they might just see the same dialogue again and again. But New Horizons really does have a lot of dialogue, and the updates to the game have introduced a ton more. You just have to kind of seek it out and talk to your villagers a lot more in different situations. That being said though, there could be more dialogue, there could be better dialogue. I think there's always room for improvement, but I do like that there is so much dialogue in the game now and some really interesting stuff with some of the NPCs as well. Music Wolf GX says, also, even hotter take, New Horizons is by technicality the worst Animal Crossing. It spent its entire shelf life trying to be what New Leaf was day one and only barely made it. I also feel like it just lacks all the charms past games had. So much content missing from the past, it just feels a bit generic. Still a great game though. So it seems like you still really enjoy the game, which is good. I mean, if you find it a great game, that's awesome, and I guess even if it is the worst to you and it's still a great game, that's a good thing. Personally though, I have to completely disagree with this one. To me, Wild World is definitively the worst Animal Crossing game.
Oh brother, this guy stinks!
Now we're all going to have our different opinions on that, but if we look at the games which have the least amount of content, it's definitely Wild World. Now that's not to say Wild World wasn't a good game. I think every mainline Animal Crossing game is good. But in terms of the lack of content, the removal of stuff like all of the main holidays from the game, I really think Wild World was a big letdown, especially compared to Animal Crossing GameCube, which set off the series in such a strong way. I know a lot of people love Wild World though, and it's such a nostalgic game for a lot of people, so I'm sure plenty of people completely disagree with me on this, which is fine. Again, like I said at the start of the video, I think that's great that we all have different favorites and different opinions about the game, but I personally can't see how New Horizons would be considered the worst when you stack it up to games like that. If we include spin-offs though, we got Amiibo Festival and stuff, so yeah, I mean, New Horizons definitely stands up really well compared to them at the very least. Personally though, New Horizons is actually my favorite, and I don't think it tried too hard to compare to New Leaf. I think it tried to focus more on decorating things and maybe focused a little bit too much on those in some ways. So there definitely is room for improvement, and I'm happy with New Horizons right now, but I'm hoping the next game is even better. Coda Kazarian said, don't like Animal Crossing, like at all. Well, all I can say to this is, bruh. I mean, this is quite a strange comment to leave on an Animal Crossing channel, but at the same time, he's entitled to his opinion, guys. If he doesn't like Animal Crossing, that's cool. It's not for everyone, believe it or not. I wasn't an Animal Crossing fan my whole life. I didn't really know much about the games. As soon as I did, I became a massive fan. So, Coda, maybe, play the games a bit more, maybe give them a bit of a try. You don't have to, But, you know, you could see what you think. Maybe you are going to become the the biggest Animal Crossing fan in the world, who knows? Walrus D Comedy said, past Animal Crossing games can be unplayable after all the new things in Animal Crossing New Leaf. Animal Crossing New Leaf did innovate the series a lot, but I think it's important to remember the games that came before and what they did for the series. All of them are so revolutionary in their own ways. For me, Animal Crossing Population Growing is just slightly behind New Leaf in terms of my favourite games. So I don't know if I can necessarily agree with that. I can see what you mean though, like I can definitely see how you feel about this. Some of the older games can be a bit tedious at times, and there definitely isn't as much to do as there is in New Leaf, but I do think they're good games and they have a lot of value in them. Atomic Bomber 23 said, Marshall and Bob shouldn't be touted as the poster boys to AC. Just because Bob is a meme doesn't mean he's super interesting, considering his Happy Home Designer house is just flowers, like many other characters in Happy Home Designer. Marshall being super popular for how cute he looks doesn't mean he's too interesting either, though he does have an advantage above Bob because he wanted his house to have a coffee/barista atmosphere. I feel both of them match with bland personalities, hence why I had to use Happy Home Designer as an example. I don't think Happy Home Designer is honestly the best way to judge any Animal Crossing character. And when I've done my Animal Crossing Survivor streams where we've pitted all of the different villagers from each species against each other, a lot of comments I see is, this character's overrated, you know, they're not good because they're popular. And I've never really liked that take. Just because a villager is popular doesn't mean they're bad. Now when there's actual criticism for them, like, okay, maybe you find Bob annoying because you see him too much, I can get behind that. I can say, okay, you know, that's fair enough. But just because they're really popular, it's not a bad thing. And Bob definitely isn't a meme. He might be to some people, but for people like me, he's just genuinely my favorite villager. I've said that a few times, and I'm sure people feel the same about Marshall as well. These characters definitely can become memes, I don't doubt that, but, you know, for some people, we just generally love these characters, and I think there's an Animal Crossing character for everyone. So if people love these characters, that's completely fine. However, I will say it's good that every Animal Crossing character can have some sort of love from somebody, and, you know, I definitely think some of the less popular characters should get more love from people too, because every Animal Crossing villager is worthy of love, except Chops. Marty said, Goldie is basic. True, that is very true, but I think that's actually a good thing. I think Goldie being quite basic is just part of her charm. She's a lovable golden retriever. She's very straightforward, and I like that about Goldie's character. I'll Commit Die said, the GameCube game is kinda bad. I would love to know why you think this. I don't really have much to go off here. I'll personally say that the Animal Crossing GameCube game is my second favourite one, and it's very close to being behind New Leaf, as I mentioned earlier. I love Population Growing. It started it all off, basically. Without Population Growing, there would be no Animal Crossing today, so I think that has to be sort of respected. But at the same time, I can see why people wouldn't like it as much, because it is a bit of an older game now. Derpy Nebel said, the AC GameCube theme isn't that good. This is interesting because this is my favourite Animal Crossing theme, but at the same time it is perhaps the most basic and maybe even the most different. It's quite unique because I think at that time they were really trying to figure out the style for music in Animal Crossing. Population Growing's music is vastly different than any of the other games. I feel like Wild World's City Folk and New Leaf's music is quite similar in some ways. It's definitely different, but it all shares very similar instruments and sort of themes. But with Population Growing, they were still figuring things out, and that definitely shows. But I think that's what makes it such a good theme, you know, it's raw, it's a bit rougher than the other ones, and I think that makes it very charming. Animal Crossing Guy said, people are slightly overdramatic about how dreadful Amiibo Festival is. Whilst it's not that good, it's decent in my opinion. I agree with you. I think hating Amiibo Festival is just a bit of a meme nowadays. There are some people who genuinely dislike it, and I'm not a big fan of it at all, to be honest, and that's totally valid. But at the same time, I think ultimately it just kind of comes down to the fact that people just, we love to hate on it, you know, we can all come together and say we don't like Amiibo Festival basically, and it's just a part of the Animal Crossing community now. But I definitely agree, it's not the worst game out there. Amiibo Festival probably doesn't deserve as much hate as it gets. I just think the timing for it was so bad because people were waiting for Animal Crossing on the Wii U. We have this first one by Abby Lee Hood, and they say, I've grown to like the soundtrack. I didn't expect basically an acousticy / folky New Horizons soundtrack, but I don't hate it. So yeah, a lot of the comments that I've seen about Animal Crossing New Horizons soundtrack have actually been quite negative, and a lot of people really have not liked the songs within the game, which I think is such a shame. I think they're really cool. Not all of them are amazing, but I just think it's kind of a matter of taking your time to get used to them. They're not perfect, some of them are really strange, like the 3 AM one, but I've not really heard a soundtrack in the game that I hate. I will admit I still prefer the one from Animal Crossing City Folk and Wild World, but compared to this one with New Leaf, I'm pretty indifferent. I don't really have a preferred favourite out of the two, though I definitely can see why people like Animal Crossing New Leaf's soundtrack so much. We have this next one by AC Matt, and they say, Bunny Day wasn't that bad, it was just a little long and people had tons of free time as well. But it really hit Cherry Blossom season because it completely overlapped. And then we have a response saying maybe they should make Bunny Day a little shorter, like make everything super common for 3 days or something. So Bunny Day is probably one of the least popular events in Animal Crossing that I've ever seen. There were so many memes for it and people just really did not seem to enjoy it. But then AC Matt is kind of saying here it wasn't that bad, which I think is an interesting take, and I kind of wanted to include that in this video, just because it's good to see a different side, you know, that actually someone out there didn't really mind Bunny Day. Me personally, I didn't hate it, but I didn't really enjoy it either, and I definitely think it should have been a lot shorter than it was. It completely consumed the game, and I hope they won't take that path with future events because it just would not be great. This next one comes by Riley, and Riley says, I'm not sure if this is unpopular, but I find Isabelle more annoying than she was in the previous games. I'm going to be honest with you, I think she's way less annoying than the previous games, and part of that is because she has barely any role at all. You don't really need to talk to her much or ever once you've done with the whole island rating stuff. So I don't really see how she can be that annoying when you barely get to interact with her. In Animal Crossing New Leaf, you were interacting with her so much more, and she would do a lot of frustrating things like tell you where public work projects can and couldn't go. That kind of thing annoyed me a lot, so I definitely think she was a lot more irritating in Animal Crossing New Leaf. In Pocket Camp, she didn't really have much of a role, and in Happy Home Designer, she was kind of a little bit irritating, but I think she's actually pretty good in Animal Crossing New Horizons. This next one comes by Richard, and I'm sure a lot of you saw this one coming. Raymond isn't bad, in fact I'd be more than happy if he came to my island, but I don't really understand the hype around him. I don't hate him, I just don't understand. Raymond is one of those characters who's either insanely popular or insanely disliked by Animal Crossing fans. Though I will say these days I tend to see more comments and discussions about the fact people don't like him and that he's overrated. So I'm not even sure he can be considered overrated anymore when literally so many people go out of their way to tell you how much they hate Raymond. I get it, I really do. I get that it's like not amazing to see a character so much, you know, a character that you are constantly seeing online, the same villager, you want to see all the villagers loved equally, and that's totally fair. But I think calling Raymond overrated is just not really a good criticism. I never really liked that word, especially about Animal Crossing villagers. I think they're all fine in their right, and if someone wants to like and enjoy Raymond, they have every right to do so. I personally like Raymond quite a lot, and he lives on my island. I don't care about the fact that he's popular or how many Nook Mile tickets he's worth. I don't care about that stuff. I just like him as a character. The hype behind him, I guess, is just that he's a cool cat, you know? All of the cats in Animal Crossing have been really popular. Lolly, Bob, you name it, Punchy, Rosie, you can probably list off almost all of them and they will be beloved by so many different fans. So it's really no surprise that there's so much hype behind Raymond. Too much hype? Maybe, but at the end of the day, if people just want to like Raymond, that's completely fine in my eyes. This next one comes from James Fonda. Since it seems some people are saying otherwise more and more, but New Horizons is by a huge amount the best in the series. So this is a tricky one for me. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I'm gonna be 100% honest, I love Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've already played it for like 700 hours or something like that, it's a lot. But let me tell you, I still prefer Animal Crossing New Leaf. Animal Crossing New Leaf is still my favourite in the series. I feel like at the current stage, Animal Crossing New Horizons just lacks content, it really does. It's missing so many things from previous games that should be here and just aren't at this current stage. The main thing for me is the furniture, the lack of furniture. To call it the best in the series by a huge amount, to me, would be a bit of an overstatement. I mean, of course, all of these opinions are subjective and they are opinions, so everyone has a different feeling about the game. But for me personally, I could not call it the best in the series by a huge amount. I do think that it does so many things right though,
and it is a really good game, and I'm excited to see how it does shape up in the coming years. We have a final one by Robert Perret, and they say Kix is a garbage visiting character and should be replaced by literally any other Animal Crossing staple. Or give him some personality, he has Mabel potential. Yeah, they really forgot about Kix. They kind of just put him in there, let him stay outside resident services and let him have a really tiny inventory and said, see ya, and that definitely was a bit of a shame. Kix feels like he's sort of been abandoned when he actually does have kind of an interesting backstory. You know, he came from the streets, he was shining people's shoes on like the steps, and then he got his own store, which was really cool progression, and now he's just kind of selling as a vendor outside resident services. What a shame for Kix. I just think it's a bit pointless for him to be there when you can get backpacks and shoes from other places in the game, but who knows, maybe they'll find a way to increase his appeal. Mijuki said, I think those laid out paths are incredibly ugly. I really prefer the natural dirt paths that occur when walking, running over a spot. So, I mean, first of all, how are these ugly? I think these look really good, but even if they're not to your personal taste, I don't see how they could be worse than, you know, the feature where you remove grass. That was such a bad feature in my opinion. I mean, I did a video on that, and that was one of my most popular videos ever. It seemed like most people tended to agree that that feature was terrible, so I guess this is a pretty good unpopular opinion. I think these dirt paths will probably grow on you, to be honest with you. I think just give it a bit of time and these dirt paths you'll probably love as much as the other thing. I mean, destroying your grass, it's just not a good feature at all. It really isn't. It's probably the worst feature in the series, in my personal opinion. Jonas said every mainline game besides New Leaf is getting boring really fast because there isn't much to do. So Animal Crossing is the kind of game where you need to use your imagination a little bit and kind of live your own life out slowly. And it's much slower in older games, I'll give you that, but I don't really think there's anything wrong with that at all. There's still a lot to do. You can fish and catch bugs, decorate your house, you can decorate your town. I mean, not so much in the original Animal Crossing, but later on you can put down pathways and stuff, and talk to animals and get to know them, and that's part of the fun. It isn't just about being a mayor and putting down public works projects or whatever. You know, Animal Crossing is about living the simple life, and I think that's part of the appeal. I can definitely see why it might get a little bit boring for you, especially if you're more used to the way Animal Crossing New Leaf works, or you just prefer that way. But I think even New Leaf can get quite slow sometimes, and to be honest with you, I think the dialogue runs out much quicker than it does in other games, and that to me makes the game feel a lot more boring than, say, Animal Crossing for the GameCube, where I'm constantly discovering new dialogue from villagers. So this one was posted quite a few times. It's people saying they don't like Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, and I thought I would give my opinion on Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. I kind of have done so a few times on the channel, but I'm going to do it here. So I don't hate Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. In fact, I think Pocket Camp was really fun for a time. I don't like the direction that they took the game in. I felt like after a certain amount of time the game became too focused towards microtransactions. And though it's true those were optional, it was sometimes impossible to complete events 100% without spending money on the game, or at least spending your Leaf tickets, and those were a finite resource. So, I don't know, I think Pocket Camp really fell off and it became quite disappointing after time, but it's not an inherently bad game and it's not a bad idea. Like I said, at a time I thought it was really good, but eventually Pocket Camp just became the kind of game that I didn't want to play at all anymore, which is such a shame because I love everything Animal Crossing, so to have to say that is kind of sad. Cass Blair says, Tom Nook has grown so much since the GameCube days, and is genuinely a good guy, fight me. And Blanzy64 on YouTube said, I think Tom Nook is a really good guy. Agreed 100%, you guys are 100% correct. Tom Nook is a good guy, and he deserves the love and attention that he should be getting nowadays. Here we have some people saying that Isabelle is not great and that she's overrated. So we talked about this one in the last video and I still find it really funny. Guys, what has Isabelle ever done to you? She's done so much for us. She's done so much to help us. And yes, like before, I do agree that some other characters deserve as much love as she does. Like Tom Nook. Tom Nook's been there since the very start. Why doesn't Tom Nook have so many rabid stans? I don't know. But either way, Isabelle's great. We love Isabelle here. She does so much for us, guys. Come on, cut us some slack. Stardew says, crafting and stamina. I don't really like it. It just reminds me a lot about Minecraft. Well, I don't see what's wrong with that. But Minecraft certainly wasn't the first game to have crafting and stamina features in it. So I don't know. I mean, I guess I can see the similarities, but really, what's wrong with that? It just seems like a great new feature to me. Finally, we have one by Chocolate Gaming who says, in my opinion, Bob is overrated. I've never had him in one of my towns, so I could definitely be missing something, but I don't see why everyone likes him so much. I can't see the appeal. Well, why does anyone like anything? They just kind of do. You know, maybe it's his design, maybe it's his character, maybe it's the memes. I don't know. I can tell you guys why I like Bob. I just think he's a great villager. He's my favorite. He really caught my eye when I first met him in Animal Crossing, and I love his personality and his entire chill vibe. It's not about liking him just for the sake of liking him, you know, he's just a good character. And I think, as I've said a few times in this channel, underrated is kind of a lazy way to dismiss something, you know. Maybe he is really popular, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's bad. Just because something is popular doesn't mean that it's bad, you know. So I think Bob, also, like Isabelle, deserves to be cut some slack. Kaiuchi Art said, while I love Isabelle, I feel like they added her to the new game just because she's a fan favourite. She doesn't really help with any of the major developments of the town, and any of her tasks could easily go to Tom Nook. I'm happy they brought her back, but I wish they gave her a little bit of a bigger role. Yeah, I agree, though to be honest, I think the game's main character who gets the spotlight here is Tom Nook. That's kind of why they put Isabelle down a little bit, you know, didn't give her as much to do. I do agree that she could definitely do a bit more than what she does, but at the same time it's just kind of nice to see her, to be honest. She is a fan favourite and I like her a lot, so I'm kind of just happy to see her chilling in the town hall. I'm not really bothered about what she does. Creamy Egg said, I feel kind of stuck on the island in a way. For example, New Leaf had the main street and City Folk has a city. A lot of the newly added features in Animal Crossing New Horizons took away different buildings we had in Animal Crossing New Leaf, such as Club LOL, now villagers give us emotes, and Shampoodle, now we can change their hair ourselves. Those are small things, but I feel like it gave the game so much more character. So I actually like the streamlined changes, but I don't like the fact that we have a lot less to do on the island in terms of buildings and such. I do wish we had more buildings. I mean, Club LOL could definitely be there, for example. Shampoodle probably would not fit, but maybe there is something else that Harriet could do instead. But yeah, no, it definitely does kind of feel like we're stuck on the island. I think I miss the island from Animal Crossing New Leaf the most. I never really liked Main Street in Animal Crossing New Leaf. That was kind of boring to me. I prefer having the shops on the actual island itself, like the older games. But yeah, no, it does feel like we're stuck a little bit, and it would be nice to have the island return, like Tortimer Island. Victor says, I really hate the way villagers are now. Yeah, I love them, but they sure as hell don't love me. They get sassy if you so much talk to them more than 3 times a day, and that's frustrating. They don't have you do as much stuff or run as many errands for them, which was an optional part of New Leaf that I loved. I guess maybe I need to be better friends with them for that to happen, but I've done as much as I possibly can. It's hard making friends with them when they get rude if you talk to them too much. I get that people miss mean villagers, and I think it'd be cool to have maybe a villager type that's more predisposed to being rude, but these villagers aren't rude, they're just apathetic, and that's not fun to me. I don't feel like they're my friends like I used to. Well, some of the villagers to me definitely feel like they're my friends. Like, for example, when I saw Bob in Animal Crossing New Horizons, I was like, oh my god, that's my best pal, and we always have great chats. But some villagers, yeah, definitely feel a bit more lifeless than usual in terms of dialogue, which is kind of strange because their actual like actions that they do around the island are so great. You can see them running around, you can hear them singing and doing a bunch of cool stuff. I love that so much. That's amazing and really great. But yeah, maybe their dialogue could be a little bit better, maybe a bit more could be added for them, and I'd definitely like to be able to do more for them as well. It really does feel like there aren't many errands to do for the villagers in this game. Stupid Poopid says, I hate crafting. Having your tool break is super annoying, and even gold tools aren't immune. I'd rather just buy stuff outright and not worry about having materials. Well, you can buy tools outright from Nook's Cranny, and I actually kind of like crafting. I think it's a fun new feature. It makes sense for Animal Crossing. It's sort of the kind of thing that could have always been there in my opinion, and the game still would have been really popular. But I get why people don't like it, especially the golden tool things. I think that's really weird. I don't know why that's the case, that the golden tools break. But I don't mind the regular tools breaking, to be honest. It gives you something extra to do when you need to craft more of them. It encourages you to think a little bit more about what resources you're carrying around and such, and I like that kind of idea. It's more like survivalist in a way. It's kind of like Breath of the Wild, and I enjoy that. Lotion Bottle says, okay, I'm not sure if this is an unpopular opinion or not, but I'm gonna miss Shampoodle, mostly nostalgia. Don't get me wrong, the new character customization is great, however I really miss being scammed by Harriet. Yeah, Shampoodle was one of those things that I don't miss at all, I'm not gonna lie. It was tedious, having to look up a guide every single time was kind of annoying. I'm just happy you can change your look so much easier in this game. I never really cared about Harriet, I won't lie, she's one of those characters that I found kind of boring. She's quite like Harvey in a way, to be honest. I feel like her personality really never got fleshed out very well. So yeah, I don't miss Shampoodle at all, I won't lie. Eden says, there's less incentive to keep playing because there's less buildings to unlock. A big reason I played New Leaf for so long was because I wanted to completely fill out my main street and get all the public work project buildings. But with this game, it's just Nook's Cranny, Able Sisters, and the campsite. Yeah, it's definitely a shame that there aren't many buildings in the game. I definitely think we could see more added in the future, which would be really nice. But currently, there are not many at all, and that does feel sad. I mean, you can unlock them really quickly as well. You can unlock Nook's Cranny so fast in Animal Crossing New Horizons. The Able Sisters maybe takes a little bit longer, which I think is good, but once you've done that, there is not as much to unlock in the game, and there definitely could be more. Jack McCoy says, I hate the online compared to Animal Crossing New Leaf. In New Leaf, you could go to the island and main street, there was so much to do, but in this one it's just boring. This sucks, especially since we're paying money to play online unlike the 3DS. I'm not going to go over the second opinion because I've kind of talked about that already, but I will talk about the online opinion. And yeah, I agree. I don't think the online sucks as such. Like, I think it's fine, and it's cool that you can play with 8 people, that's really great. But the fact that you can play with 8 people yet not really have much to do online is a shame. It really is a shame. It would be nice if there were more to do. I think even just adding Tortimer Island back to the game would solve this completely. Having the mini games, being able to go to the island and hunt for bugs or whatever, yeah, bring that back, and I think the online would be really great in Animal Crossing New Horizons. BB says, the voice files of some of the returning animals, Blathers, Gulliver, etc. sound like they're younger than they should be, and I don't like it. I feel like their sounds should be a deeper tone to make them sound older. Yeah, I know what you mean. I think the new voices, some of them are really great and I love them, but other ones are definitely taking me a bit of time to actually get used to. I don't really know how to feel about some of the voice files. I don't really think there's anything wrong with them, and I think in time we'll pretty much all get used to them and we won't even remember what the old voices sound like. But for now, it's one of those changes that you just have to get used to and see how you feel about it later on, basically. See, Goal says, a lot of the hourly music is bad / not memorable. I can only identify a few hours individually, one being 3am because I hate it. A lot of the tracks sound super similar and they don't carry the mood of the times of day. So this is one that I really don't agree with at all. I think the music in Animal Crossing New Horizons is great, and that, you know, the game is just new. People just aren't used to the music yet, that's the truth of it. I don't know why any of the tracks could be hated, really. I mean, 3am, I can, you know, it's not one of my favorite tracks in Animal Crossing, but is it really that bad? I just feel it's the case where we're so used to the ones from Animal Crossing New Leaf that we just aren't used to these ones yet. It's different, it's a new kind of style, they're trying out new things, and I think some of them work so well. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of repetition, but New Leaf did the exact same thing with the main theme song. That's sort of a thing they've always done in Animal Crossing. If you look back at City Folk, they did the same thing. You know, City Folk and Wild World, they had little bits from the theme song in each hourly theme, and it's just kind of their way of keeping the tracks cohesive and keeping a sort of cohesive style for the game. So honestly, I don't really have a problem with any of the tracks. I can kind of understand why maybe people wouldn't like them yet, but I do think it is the case where they will just grow on you, and in time you'll learn to like or at least tolerate the tracks, because, you know, some of them are interesting. And 5pm, that is a bop. That's like one of my favorite songs in Animal Crossing. The next opinion says, I love the New Horizons soundtrack. If I'm ever feeling burnout on the game, I listen to it and it gives me energy to play the game again. This is really interesting because most of the comments I got were actually saying they really dislike the soundtrack, and usually I see that a lot. And for me, I'm kind of torn. I do really like some of the tracks. For example, I think 5 p.m. is great. This airport counter music I'm playing is really great. The tour music is great. The resident services music is great. But most of the tracks in the game just fall really short. They're kind of repetitive. All of them kind of sound very, very similar to each other. Whereas I think New Leaf struck a very good balance of difference. And a lot of the tracks kind of had their own instrumental motifs which made them really interesting. So it's definitely a bit of a shame that the soundtrack doesn't live up to those expectations. You know, but again, I don't think it's the worst soundtrack out there, and the remixes for the songs are really great in my opinion, so I do love those. This next one says Bunny Day wasn't that bad. Yes, it went on too long, but if it had been like Halloween, no one would have cared. I kind of think this take kind of misses the point. In fact, they kind of make the point, they kind of answer their own question. If it had been like Halloween, no one would have cared. That's exactly the point. The problem was that it wasn't. It was drastically different than any other event that we've known, and it was incredibly... it interfered with the life in the game, and you have to look at it from the perspective of people who had just started up in March. They got this event very soon after the game had come out, and it interfered with so many things. Balloon presents, the amount of resources you could get, just everything pretty much. You know, Bunny Day should have worked much more similarly to Halloween. I think people would have loved it much more, so that does make a lot of sense. But, you know, the thing is, it wasn't like Halloween. It was really kind of annoying for a lot of people, and I don't think it's the worst event in history, you know? It wasn't that bad, but still, it wasn't that great either, in my opinion. Paddington says, I did not care for the summer and Halloween update. They were pretty boring in my opinion. There's this really interesting thing where I think a lot of people kind of set their expectations incredibly high for these updates and were kind of disappointed when they didn't happen maybe how they would want, which I totally get because again, you have the argument that this game is missing a lot of content, so we'd hope that these updates would provide a lot of new content, and sometimes they kind of don't and maybe fall a little bit short. But at the same time, I really don't think those updates were that bad. I think for free content updates, they were actually really good. Of course, again, you can look at it from the perspective that they were bringing back old features, but they did introduce new things too, like farming, and for a free update, I think that's pretty good. I just think with these sort of updates, you have to set your expectations pretty low, that way you won't be too disappointed when they come out. But either way, I was completely satisfied with both those updates. I think adding the Dream Suite really helped the game a lot, and farming is an exciting new addition for me. This next one says, without these seasonal updates, the game would have been dead. It's the only thing making people come back. If all the content had been there from the beginning, everyone would have burned through it by July. Well, that's interesting. So here we have someone who maybe doesn't actually like the fact the game, actually likes the fact the game has updates to keep people interested each month. I'm not too sure actually, but it's an interesting point of view. However, I will say, let's say the game did have all this and it wasn't going to come out with updates. It's very true that people could have burned through it by July, but that's pretty much every Animal Crossing game, you know? People do tend to get bored of them. You can't really expect people just to keep playing games forever and ever. People move on to the next game, that's always a thing. But the thing about Animal Crossing is a lot of the people who are really big fans of it can just find enjoyment in going through it each day and doing the tasks, even if it is quite mundane. So I don't really think it needs to have like a particularly massive amount more content than the previous games. Let's say it had the exact same amount of content as New Leaf. Yeah, sure, you could have burned through it by July. But for me, as someone who really likes Animal Crossing, I still kept playing it. You know, maybe I wanted to restart my island, or maybe I wanted to try something new, to redecorate my island, or, you know, wait for the seasonal events. Of course, if you're time traveling too, it's going to go by a lot faster, so it really comes from the perspective of how you actually play Animal Crossing, in my opinion. But there's not necessarily anything wrong by people playing burning through it by July. In this gaming world, most people burn through games in like a week or a month, you know? So from March to July, that's actually pretty good, in my opinion. This one says, I like that Dodo Airlines takes so long. It adds character to the game. Really interesting take here. I think generally speaking, most people do not like this part of the game, and it's probably one of those things that gets complained about the most. And I'll say, in this case, I actually agree with the people who don't like it, because it really is too slow. I like that there's some character to the dialogue. I'll admit, that's good, that's really good, so I agree with them there. But the amount of time it takes to connect to the internet and all these connecting screens really interferes with the online experience. Nintendo historically has never been amazing at handling online in their games, and I think New Horizons is another example of that. It's kind of a shame too, because the online for New Leaf was so interesting and good, and the fact that you could go to Tortimer Island and all that stuff really helped keep the game much more interesting. So I think they definitely fell behind when it came to the online in Animal Crossing New Horizons. This one says Raymond is cute, but not that cute. It's really interesting because Raymond is typically called one of the most popular villagers, and I think a lot of people who dislike him dislike the fact that, you know, they see him as overrated. They see him as a villager who gets worshipped and people like him too much even though he's just an ordinary cat. But here's the thing. These days, I actually see more people hate on Raymond and say they don't like him than I see people say they do like him. So can he really be called overrated when so many people go out there all the time to say how bad he is? In my opinion, he's just that. He's just a cat. You know, he's not someone to really get angry over or someone to get majorly annoyed about. He's just a cat villager. I personally like him because I like his design and I like cats. It has nothing to do with his popularity. I don't think most people look at Raymond and think, oh, I'm going to have him as my favorite because he's so popular. There may be a few, but it does kind of feel like on the other side, there are a lot of people who dislike him purely because he is liked by people. And that seems a bit backwards in my opinion. I think you should like and dislike villagers just depending on your own tastes, rather than letting the opinions of other people come into it too much. Because that's going to affect your own gameplay experience too much, and you shouldn't really let other people kind of change your whole gameplay experience like that. You know, it's kind of down to you. This one says, I hope there is going to be paid updates. I know that's probably going to be the only way we get as much furniture as the app game is getting right now. I'll gladly pay if it means more content. Really interesting one here. I think typically speaking in video games, most people don't want paid updates, but I've actually seen a lot of people kind of interested in getting paid updates for New Horizons. As for me, I definitely think it's possible one day, especially given the fact they've advertised all of these as free updates. Something about that kind of seems a little suspicious to me. And I'm not too opposed to it, it just depends on what they add. I think if they add aesthetical items that don't actually affect your gameplay, so not major features, I think paid updates would be fine for the game. You know, maybe have a little store where you can like get furniture sets from previous games or something. Again, I know that probably isn't too popular, but again, this is unpopular opinions, so I'm going to say that's a pretty good one in my books. I definitely think that it could be interesting to have paid updates for the game. But either way, I'm mostly enjoying the free ones, to be honest. This one says, I don't like how they did Halloween in New Horizons. You just went up to the villagers, gave them a sweet and left. I like how New Leaf did it with the games. It made Halloween feel more fun and got me more excited for it. Now, I'm someone who really loves New Leaf. I absolutely love New Leaf. New Leaf is still my favorite Animal Crossing game. And I agree with people all the time when they say New Leaf does a lot of things better than New Horizons. But this one I can't agree with. I just don't get it. The Halloween event is the exact same as New Leaf. It's pretty much the exact same. I don't get how this one is worse than the New Leaf one or the other games when it's the exact same. You can still scare your villagers, you can still give them candy, you can still get items. The only change here is the furniture set, but you still get a bunch of really cool furniture this time too. Again, I think this is kind of one where we're looking at New Leaf like it's better than New Horizons, but it doesn't really make much sense to me when it's the exact same. The way they did the event in New Leaf was pretty much incredibly similar to how they do it in New Horizons. So I'm really not sure I can agree that the one in New Horizons is somehow worse than New Leaf, when to me they're pretty much identical. Finally, we have this opinion that says the villagers are better in this game than any other Animal Crossing game. I like how you see them running around, interacting with items on the island and participating in events. They feel less like mindless robots that just walk around and more like living creatures. So this is really interesting because a lot of the comments I got were that the villagers feel too stale and that they're quite boring. Now, there's two sides to this. I will say the dialogue of the villagers needs massive improvements. The dialogue of the villagers really isn't great. It does get so repetitive. But in terms of the actions the villagers do, it is much better than New Leaf. I don't know if people remember, but in New Leaf, the villagers used to just stand around doing nothing. Sometimes you might catch them fishing, but honestly, that was pretty much it. They used to just stand there, like aimlessly looking off into the distance doing nothing. Now, if we want to talk about robotic, that is robotic. The fact that you can actually catch them interacting with things and actually doing things like holding items and running around and singing and that is so much better than New Leaf. That aspect is so much better, and I'll agree with this person. I just think the dialogue needs to be worked on, but that aspect, in terms of making them feel less robotic, for sure that has been improved from New Leaf.
So I'd love for you guys to tell me your thoughts and what your unpopular Animal Crossing opinions are in the comment section down below, and I hope you enjoyed this video.